there, and welcome back to another episode of Mary's Makes and Mends. Last week was my dad's 70th birthday, and I made him this plaid button-up as a gift. I've been making this video to document the process for him. Wait until the end if you'd like to see him open it up. I've made a lot of button-up shirts for my husband, but my mom had mentioned that my dad would probably like a bit of a looser fit. For this project, I'm using Helen's Closet's Cameron button-up pattern. This was such an easy pattern to follow, and Helen gives so many helpful tips in the instructions along the way. I'd highly recommend it if you're looking to make a button-up of your own. So I first cut out all of my pieces and ironed my fusible interfacing on. You may remember me struggling with that crappy plastic interfacing in other videos. Well, I finally used up the whole roll and was able to purchase some better quality stuff. I added all my stay stitching to any piece that had a curve, excluding the sleeves. It may seem like a small step, but I've learned from not adding stay stitching in other projects that it can make a big difference in preventing warping. This is a unisex pattern, and in the instructions, the buttons are on the left side, but Helen mentions that if you're wanting to make a typical menswear shirt, to have the buttons on the right-hand side. My dad would be used to having the buttons on the right side, so I folded the button placket on the right front piece and the placket for the buttonholes on the left piece. I thought this was a really cool way of making a back pleat. I've never used this method before. With wrong sides together, I pinned vertically at the notches, then folded the pleat flat and pinned again horizontally. I then basted this in place. Now I'm adding the yoke pieces to the back piece, pinning one right sides together and the other yoke piece right side to the wrong side of the back piece. Fern even came to give some supervision on this step and help make a shirt for her Poppy. I sewed this in place and graded the seams, but as I was ironing it, I realized I really didn't like the yokes that I made, and wished that I had cut the pieces on a diagonal. It's really difficult to match pattern pieces up at the yoke, and to me it just didn't look right. I wanted this shirt to be perfect for my dad, so even though it sucks to take out all the work I just did, I decided I wanted to redo the yoke pieces. I was really happy that I took the time to change it. I think it's important not to rush through sewing projects. I always feel better about a project when I take the time to make sure it's exactly how I want it to be. Now I pinned and sewed the front pieces right sides together to the back yoke piece, leaving the other yoke piece free. This is my favorite part of any button-up project, the burrito method, and not just because I like burritos. You basically just roll up the back and front pieces in between the two yoke pieces, then pin and sew the yoke pieces together. Once the yoke pieces are sewn together, I pull everything out from the neck hole and voila! Now to do the sleeve plackets. Helen goes over the steps for this very thoroughly in her instructions, so I'm not going to go too into depth on how to do this. The first time that you do a sleeve placket can be very intimidating. It's probably a good idea to practice first, especially if you don't have much extra fabric to spare for your button-up. Now onto the sleeves. I'm adding 2 rows of basting stitches on the sleeves. Sometimes you can get away with just adding 1 row of basting stitches, but it's really annoying if the thread snaps and you have to do all the stitches over again. So I usually just add 2 right from the start. I pin the sleeves to the sleeve holes right sides together. I always do flat felled seams to finish the raw edges of a button-up. I sewed my seams at 5/8 of an inch and then graded the side of my project that I wanted the seams to be pressed towards at 1/4 of an inch. I folded and ironed the seam over the 1/4 of an inch seam to basically encase this seam. I've done this enough times that I usually don't end up pinning the seam, but if this is the first time you've done a flat felled seam, it might be a good idea to pin it before you sew. I repeated this process for the sides of the shirt, making my flat felled seam go towards the back. Now onto the cuffs. I pinned and sewed the interface side of the cuffs to the sleeve. I flipped the cuffs out the right way and I pressed them and top stitched around them. Two things I always wait until the end to do are the collar and the pockets. I always find once the collar and the collar stand have interfacing on them, they are very difficult to stretch and line up to the neckline. I usually end up making these pieces a few sizes up, and I can always cut them a bit later if I make them too big. To make the collar, I pinned the two pieces right side together and sewed them all around except for the bottom. I graded this seam, then turned it right side out. Once right side out, I top stitched all around the collar, closing the bottom of it as well. For the collar stand that will be inside the shirt, I pressed the bottom seam upwards on the wrong side. I added a cute label for my dad. I figured this one would be good since he can always remember his 70th birthday was in 2022. I pinned the interface collar stand piece to the neckline right sides together and sewed this on. After sewing, I pressed it towards the top of the shirt. I pinned the collar in place and basted it on, then I pinned the other collar stand piece and sewed all three layers together. I find this to be the hardest part of making a button-up, sewing the bottom of the collar stands together. Sometimes I end up hand sewing this part to take my time and make sure it all lines up properly. Now to add the finishing touches of the shirt, I folded the bottom of the shirt inwards twice and top stitched to create the hem. I use this method for making pockets quite a bit. First fold the top seam towards the wrong side, then fold down at the notches toward the right side and sew this seam in place at the sides. Turn the pocket right side out and iron the seams inwards to create a nice crisp pocket. I find it easiest just to use another shirt to line up the pocket to where I want it. This is a button-up that I made for my husband Eric a while ago. I really love how the pocket turned out, and I'm glad that I used the same diagonal pattern that I used for the yokes. I'm going to have a more extensive video on making buttonholes soon, but basically what I did was I measured out how big I wanted the holes to be, then made two very small parallel lines of zigzag stitches, and stitched the top with two side-by-side rows of larger zigzag stitches. Now here's the big reveal.
Okay, so I'm opening this up.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh! My birthday present.
There's a card too.
Hey everybody!
Happy birthday.
Watching the video. Everyone and watch.
Oh, nice. Oh, let's see.
You made that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look at. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow.
Emmy got to watch me put the buttons on this morning, right, Emmy?
Thank you, Mary.
What?
Thanks so much for watching, and happy birthday, Dad. If you liked this video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up, and if you're interested in seeing more projects like this, then hit the subscribe button. I post new videos here every Sunday. Bye for now.